Credit Union Broadcast Center. Former State Senator John Tassoni,
Hi,
I
Kate.
appreciate
How are
your
you?
coming in today.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Host of Recovery Radio.
That is right.
And wanted to bring you in today because of some numbers that we've saw reported, and you brought to my attention, and I thought folks really need to know about this, what's going on with the opioid crisis.
Right.
15 overdoses reported in that 48-hour reporting period
Right.
Between the 24th and the 27th of
That's
March,
correct.
I believe. I mean, what did you think when you saw these numbers?
Very disturbing, and it's unfortunate that we're losing a lot of young people. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's really sad.
Where are we in 2017? Obviously, so much attention and so much work's being done. Where are things working, and where do things, what else needs to be done?
That's a great question.
That's the big question.
I mean, we have a recovery radio show now, which I host. When I first started it a few years ago, we had 200 listeners. We're up to 14,000 listeners a month. And we're trying to train people. We're trying to train the trainer. We're doing a lot of good things in the state, but it's just getting worse. I think it's because we're in the midst of the southern states in Canada, and they're using 95 as a direct access up the East Coast, and they're making their pit stops here. They're doing what they need to do, but it's amazing to me how many people we've lost. We've lost 12% last year of overdoses, and that's not even counting. A lot of people have failed to realize that a lot of the elderly now, because they're going in for surgeries, they're getting these Oxycontins, they're taking them home, they're taking them for pain, they're having mixed drinks, they're having beer and wine, they go to bed and they die of an overdose, but it's not recorded because they're under doctor's care, they don't do an autopsy, and then that's the end of it.
So clearly, a lot of kind of off the books numbers of overdoses that just aren't reported because of this.
Correct. Right.
So how is the state doing in terms of being able to support services needed to address this, both from a prevention and a treatment standpoint?
Well, prevention, that's a big issue because there's no prevention dollars here in the state. The General Assembly has taken it all out. That's number one. Number two, the issue of adolescent care, we have 0 adolescent residential treatment here in Rhode Island. It's gone. But we're okay to pay $500 to $900 out of state placement, but we pay our providers here $180 to $200 a day. That is ridiculous. And the other part of that thing that we're all losing concept is that it's not the inner city kids anymore. It's the outlying kids. Smithfield, where I come from, called me a couple of days ago asking for information on edibles. So a lot of the schools are having these type of problems. And the issue with, as far as I'm concerned, is that when these adolescents need to be put into treatment and we don't have it here, there's no family component. Because the inner city kids, the families don't have the transportation to go to Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, where they have beds. But we're okay paying, the state's okay paying $500, $900 a day out of state, but we only pay our providers here $200 a day. And I've always learned in the General Assembly, once you spend $1 here in Rhode Island, it revolves 7 times.
Yes.
So what are we doing? What are we doing?
That's the big question, and that's why I wanted you in, again, to see these numbers and to see the attention paid within the community. Obviously folks in the health community and the addiction community know these numbers, get these, but to the general public, I mean, they have a sense, that there's a major crisis here. And, to the average person who might think, again, but this is reaching, as you said, every corner of the state.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but it's professional people, it's
Yes.
nurses, it's doctors, it's accountants. It's not the kids on the corner anymore. This is broad-based now. Rhode Island is in a terrible situation right now. And if this was issues to do with the heart or diabetes or an outbreak of AIDS, we'd be going berserk. But it doesn't seem like there's a sense of urgency in this state to get this problem resolved.
And what have you seen from the governor's office?
Well, we have the overdose council, and everybody sits around the table and talks about it. They bring in people who have survived overdoses. I think we need to do more, and I've been talking to the speaker about this. I think we need to have a drug czar here in Rhode Island. Someone who can take the reins, someone can go out there and do the work. We got too many sectors here trying to deal with one problem instead of all going through one person and trying to get the education that needs to be out there for our parents. I mean, just think of it, 14,000 people listen to a radio show about addiction.
Goes to show
That's
you.
crazy, because people don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
I mean, I put a young boy into treatment today, but that stopped when there was an insurance issue. Now, I finally got that squared away, but he refused to go after 2 hours. At that point, I had him to go into treatment, but after 2 hours playing games with the insurance companies, he lost them.
And I know you are working with Sam, and you are. Let's talk about the marijuana issue for a little bit, because I did have the former head of the Rhode Island Medical Society to come in, and who is a supporter of legalization of marijuana, and made the case that folks who might have opioid addictions might then smoke as a alternative. Clearly, you don't agree with that vantage point, or what you don't see that even being a viable option. Talk to us from your knowledge of the opioid addiction crisis, how marijuana, as you see, would not work well. It would not be good for Rhode Island.
When I was a kid, marijuana, the THC level was about 5%. Now it's at 28. We have people out there trying to test it at 40%. It's high THC levels are making our kids hallucinate, do crazy things. There's only, I think, 2 people in the ACI right now in there for marijuana. All the rest are for what they've done under the influence of marijuana. So these ideas that this group is having regulate marijuana, we can't do UHIP right. We can't do the DMV stuff right. We can't do a lot of things right in Rhode Island. Even the medical marijuana we can't do right. And now all of a sudden you're going to put on the backs of our children that we're going to be able to regulate, tax, and everything's going to be fine. Now, I'm a consumer, you're a consumer. Do you like to pay taxes? I don't like to pay taxes, so if there's a way to the black market where I don't have to pay the 10, 20, 50%, or whatever they decide to put on it, the black market's going to grow. And I don't get where people can just sit there and tell us that because we're going to regulate it, we're going to tax it, we're going to be fine. In Washington, D.C., I just heard the statistic today. They've had in their budget, I think, an extra $3 million for marijuana sales. They had 3 fatalities that had to do with marijuana on their highways. Those people have sued the state and won $1.5 million. So that's a wash. You're not going to make any money. Our human services budget right now is an enormous budget. What's it going to look like 10 years down the road when a lot of these kids have been smoking? Now they've switched to cocaine, heroin, fentanyl. Now we're dying, now we're burying more. I mean, this is a complicated issue. We have a piece of legislation that said, listen, let's stop, let's hold up, let's look at, see what's happening in Colorado and Washington, and if you're going to do it, make sure you have the rules and regulations to bring it forward.
And you just pointed out, voted down by the Senate in New Hampshire.
Voted down in the Senate in New Hampshire 19-4, and it was voted down in Ohio. Now, the proponents say we got the votes in Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. They had the votes in New Hampshire and they had the votes in Ohio too, so guess what happened? It failed.
And what, the proponents are saying, well, it's, coming online in Massachusetts, right over the border. A lot of the argument is folks will go to Massachusetts and Rhode Island will still suffer the problems. What do you say to that argument?
It's not all about the money. This is a society issue. I have a grandson who's 2.5. By the time he goes into junior high, God knows what the state's going to look like. Look at Colorado. Look at Stoner Hill. Look at around Coors Field and what's happening over there. That's where we need our General Assembly people to go out to Colorado and see the effect of that city and what it's done. Now, there's a lot of cities and towns in Colorado that opted out. That said, we don't want it in our area. Mm-hmm. So now it's confined. So the numbers that are coming out of Colorado, the so-called good numbers, are skewed.
Because cities and towns opting, it's not truly statewide.
That's correct.
Would you envision, again, I'm assuming you would envision that happening here, cities and towns taking it up on an individual basis?
Well, the legislation is very difficult for cities and towns to opt out.
Okay.
Now, did you know in Colorado, there's more places that sell marijuana than there are Starbucks and McDonald's combined.
That's a lot.
And that's a concentrated area. It's not statewide, it's a concentrated area. So a lot of their figures don't match up. They're saying that our figures don't match up. Well, you know what? I'm in it every day. I put people in treatment every day. My radio show didn't go from 200 to 14,000 because it's not a problem. We have a definite problem here in Rhode Island.
So talk to us about your top priorities up at the Statehouse this year then.
Well, my top priority is to stop legalization of marijuana, number one.
That's priority number one.
Yeah, and we have some bills in for the Substance Use Leadership Council to bring education back into the schools again from K to 12. So these kids will learn about substance abuse, put it in the healthcare curriculum.
Where does it stand now?
They've had hearings in the House, not in the Senate. Last year passed out of the Senate, 38 to nothing, and failed in the House in the last night of session. We've asked both, we're gonna have to go back in and ask the new Senate president to see if he can get it on the docket quickly. So this stuff shouldn't be held up at the end. This stuff is something that the state needs. We're in crisis. We need to get that education back into the schools.
Well, where's the education in the schools right now stand?
Well, obviously, it says that you may teach it. We're trying to say you need to teach it. You will teach it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to prove right now.
Okay, and trying to get that to the forefront, and not again to wane at the end of the session.
It can't wait. I mean, we're in crisis. We're in crisis. We got kids. I mean, I had a young boy on my show at 12 years old doing needles with his parents. That's bizarre to me. I mean, I'm a diabetic. I'm afraid to give myself a shot every night and every morning. Imagine a 12-year-old shooting heroin. I don't get it, you know. And that's a problem here because we have our kids going to school. They go back to the same environment. It's not working.
What do you say to that national campaign? You see the issues. You see it on TV. It's that let's talk about it. It's the parents talking about drug issues. Again, you go back to saying, well, if this is diabetes, if this was heart disease. Is there still a stigma associated with it?
Oh, no doubt. There's a stigma associated with it beyond belief today. I sit on the juvenile hearing board in Smithfield and Johnson. I have the kids coming in because of instead of going to family court, but you never see, hardly ever see two parents come in. It's always a single mom or a single dad, and these kids, have done crazy things, and that's why they're at the hearing board. But it's the parents that are, number one, too busy, or the split families. There's no more family like when I was brought up every Sunday. You had the macaroni dinner, everybody was there. That doesn't happen anymore. Kids are left alone for hours at a time. Of course they're gonna get in trouble. The new president wants to cut the after-school programs. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, our kids need structure today.
So you talk about just the dearth of resources here in Rhode Island. What do you say to the parent who might be watching that, knows their kid is using, has concerns their child is using, and doesn't know what to do? Where do they turn?
Well, they can call me. I'll give you my cell phone number. It's 451-1305. I'll try to get them into treatment. Obviously, it's not going to be here. Mm-hmm. It's going to be an out-of-state facility, if they need to go, stay in. But it's tough. It's tough today. I mean, that's what we're batting our heads against the wall all the time. I just came from a meeting with the state and trying to figure out what we're going to do for adolescent care. They want to put all these programs into the schools, but when a nurse or someone picks up the phone, we need to get that child treatment ASAP.
Yes.
And the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be. And I say this all the time. I even say it to the healthcare people. If you don't take care of little Johnny now, and little Johnny becomes 18, 19, 20 years old, he's $1 million baby.
Yeah.
My dad was in Miriam a few weeks ago, and the guy in the next bed was there 134 times. Substance abuse, mental health issues. So obviously he's fallen through the cracks. Now imagine the cost of him being there 134 times. That's a huge amount of money. Huge amount of money.
How many phone calls do you get on average, daily, weekly?
Weekly I probably get 5. I get 5.
Just calling you.
I mean, it's just me.
Yeah.
I'm working with the Leadership Council. I have the radio show. We get emails, questions. And I feel bad. And a lot of times I get the grandparents calling because they're the ones that are controlling the kids now. Though the children are living with them. If they've never seen it like this. I mean, there was really no drugs when they were kids. We went through the 60s with LSD and stuff like that, but the bulk of the people that grew up, they never had this problem.
So, you know, as I said, you brought the information to my attention again about this number of that 15 overdoses in one weekend. You talk about the need for resources at the state level. I mean, are we going to see this tide turned?
That's a very good question. Hopefully, and I say this all the time on my show, if someone can knock on that door and tell me we don't need it anymore, I'll be the happiest guy in Rhode Island. But it doesn't seem to be going that way. There's too many people dying on the streets and not enough resources being put forward on education of what's going on. This is crazy. You know, a few weeks ago you saw in the paper where we had 3 police departments in Rhode Island who wouldn't carry Narcan. Now we're down to 1. We finally convinced the other 2 to
What was
go.
the pushback?
The pushback was, it's another thing we have to carry. But, you know, I say, it's another life you may be able to save.
Yes.
And it's not and I'll use this word, it's not the people in the inner cities who are low income or anything like that. It could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your child. I don't get it.
So you talked about your legislative agenda being opposed to the legalization of marijuana, looking for the education component back in the schools. Any other items you want to?
Co-pays.
Okay.
So co-pays, what we're trying to do is set a limit on a co-pay if you have substance abuse issues, because you need mental health treatment. A lot of people are not going to their second or third visit because the co-pays are $15, $25. If we had a package of, like, we charge them $40 a month and they can go, whether it could be substance abuse or mental health, they'll get to their appointments. But right now, they're not doing it because by the end of the week, if you go to 2 substance abuse or 2 mental health, it's probably about a good $100. And where are they going to get that? They're not going to get that.
And any other states, you mentioned the drug czar potential, that any other states have? We know at the national level that there's been a drug czar, but what about states? Have other states implemented one person to oversee drug treatment?
That's a good question because I get that all the time. I don't care about the other states.
You care about Rhode Island?
I care about Rhode Island. I care about the kids and people that are dying on the street. Last year we're up 12%. We're looking to skyrocket this year. You can't tell me. In 15 was it just in the Warwick area?
Yes. Yes, that was just
God knows what we had in Burrillville and Woonsocket that haven't been reported yet. And that's another problem with the reporting issue with the hospitals. They don't get around to reporting when they're supposed to. They're busy. They're too busy. And this other thing is it's uncompensated care. If these people don't have insurance, who's paying that? We're paying it. So we need to figure out something. We're not figuring it out yet.
Let's go back to the drug czar. Would you need a legislative proposal? I mean,
Yes.
And that has not yet happened.
No, you know what? There's money attached
There's
to
money,
it.
yeah.
Everybody's afraid, but you know what? If it's 100,000 or 200,000
And it's lives.
and it works, how many lives we can save? You can't put a price on a life.
That is true. Well, as I said, wanted to come in and get the sense of where we are right now and the difficulties, you know, facing the addiction community, and wanted to hear from you what you see as being necessary up at the Statehouse to just try to address the issue for folks in need and to address this, this epidemic.
I do think that, and I don't want to use the word, but I think they're getting it now because I'll tell you why. I'm getting calls from them now that their friends, that their relatives need to go into treatment.
You say them, meaning legislators.
Legislators, yep. And I know it's unfortunate, but
Comes to the point of if it impacts you.
right. And the schools is another issue. I mean, the schools are very hesitant to let training go into their schools pertaining to substance abuse. But you know, I had a meeting with 11 superintendents a couple of years ago and offered all this free stuff to them. Not one of them took it up.
And what's their hesitancy, do you think?
Because they don't want it on their resume that they had a problem with opioids or substance abuse in their district as they've been the superintendent. Like, there's no problems with drinking in Barrington, and there may not be any problems with substance abuse in Smithfield, and I'll use that because they're the ones that called me last week about the edibles. I mean, when are they going to wait? When someone's dead in a stall and it's going to be too late?
Yeah. Well, as I said, we're going to keep paying attention to this issue, reaching out to you and folks in the community.
Call
So
me
I
anytime.
appreciate your coming in today.
Thank you very
John
much.
Tassoni with Recovery Radio, former state senator. Just handed out a cell phone. Again, we'll place it online as well. Addressing folks, again, recent uptick in Warwick, 15 overdoses at the end of March in just one weekend. Speaking about what he sees as necessary, especially from the state level, to address this epidemic. I'm sure we'll have him back. One of the biggest, if not one of the most important issues facing the state.